All those men. There were so many men. But they didn't love you. I loved you. I needed you. But don't worry. I'm not gonna kill you. I'm gonna keep you. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are doing another movie review. And this is the 1980 slasher classic, Maniac. I warned you not to go out tonight. Starring Joe Spinell of Taxi Driver fame and Rocky fame, and also the beautiful Caroline Munro, who starred in Spy Who Loved Me, along with the Hammer classic Dracula AD 1972, and many others. So it's definitely came out in the boom of the slasher genre, which was 1980. You had Friday the 13th coming off of Halloween, and right then in 1980s where it really started to take off with films like Maniac and Friday the 13th, and then you had the wave in 1981 with My Bloody Valentine and all that. So yes, this was kind of the beginning of the slasher boom of the 1980s. Started in 1980. And this film, I feel, is probably the most disturbing of all of them. It's a psychological study into the mind of a madman. And it's certainly influenced by, I would say, Psycho. So the killer, Frank Zito, played by Joe Spinell, has some serious mommy issues. He has in his apartment a shrine set up to his mother with her picture of her as a young woman, and he talks to it. He talks to her while he's talking to himself, and we don't know the difference if he's talking to her, if he's talking to himself. It's kind of a gray area, not quite sure. But one thing's for sure, he's completely obsessed about his dead mother. And so we first start the film at a beach, and it seems like real late at night, and there's this young couple, getting a little frisky in the middle of the beach. No one's around anywhere, of course, because this is like real late at night. And that's when the killer strikes. Real late at night, real wee hours of the morning, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, when nobody's wandering the streets, nobody's at the beach, no one's anywhere really that late at night. And they fall prey to this maniacal serial killer, this maniac, if you will, Frank Zito. And he kills the young woman, and then he wraps this wire hanger thing around the dude's neck and lifts him up, and it's really bloody and gruesome and nasty. So we find out this is what he does. He preys upon young women and young couples in the middle of the night, in the wee hours of the morning. He stalks the streets of New York City, picks up prostitutes, and in one scene we see that he picks up a young prostitute, brings her into the hotel room, tells her to pose for him, act like a model, and it's really disturbing. And he starts kissing her and stuff, and then he grabs her throat out of nowhere, and he doesn't let go, and you see the maniacal, insane look in his face. Such an awesome performance by Joe Spinell, I have to say. I'd say Oscar caliber. I mean, you really get inside his head, and he's so incredibly demented and deranged, and you see that psychotic look in his eyes. He's strangling the prostitute, and things get much worse from there. Once he kills her and you see her lifeless body laying there on the bed, and it looks so realistic, it's so well done. And then he takes a scalpel, and scalps the top of her head off like old school Indian style, you know. Yeah, really nasty and slow, and you see the blood pour down her head, and he peels her scalp back. You can see her brain. Oh, it's brutal. This is a brutal, brutal slasher movie. And by the way, it's got awesome, awesome gore effects by, of course, who else could it be? The legendary Tom Savini, of course. And Tom Savini himself makes a cameo appearance in the film. We saw him before as he acted in Dawn of the Dead, so yeah, Tom Savini did his share of acting as well. So he does the gore effects for the film and does a little bit of acting in the film. He plays a young man taking this young girl out to the make-out point area, I guess, you know, with no one around, late at night, of course. And of course, that's when the Maniac strikes. He comes out late at night. This time he's got a guitar case filled with all kinds of bad stuff, like a shotgun. And he stalks around the car as they're making out, and the girl happens to spot him in the window. She's like, "Look, there's someone there." He's like, "What are you kidding? You crazy?" He's like, "Please, let's get out of here." And so they get in the front seat, and as soon as he turns his headlights on to leave, there he sees the maniacal killer in the shadows, and he runs and jumps on top of the car with the shotgun and blows his head completely off into pieces, a million pieces. It's really graphic and nasty. One of the most brutal death scenes I've seen in a horror film. It's so graphic and brutal and nasty. And that's the kind of movie this is. It pulls no punches, you know. It shows every gritty, grimy, dirty detail. And that's what sets this film apart from a lot of the slasher films from the early 1980s. This one just goes for broke, and it's very realistic at the same time. Because these things happen in real life, especially around that time. There were maniacs running around in the streets, you know. These things do happen in real life, and that's what's so disturbing about this movie. And it's played so well because you got the great performance from Joe Spinell. You just really get inside the head, inside the mind, and you see from the perspective of the killer, and it's really disheartening. It's really disturbing. So yeah, and then he sees this young nurse getting out from doing the late shift. And it's funny because you see her talking with her girlfriend, her co-worker, about the maniac on the loose, because it's all over the news, you know. It's in the newspapers all about this maniac going around killing young women. And after talking about that, her fellow nurse offers to give her a ride home. And decides, no, I'm going to walk to the train station, you know, no thanks. You know there's a freaking lunatic around murdering young women just like yourself. And she decides to walk out in the middle of the pitch black night, and guess who she sees across the street? Mr. Frank Zito. And what I feel is the scariest part of the film, which doesn't really involve blood and gore, as he chases her and stalks her through the train station. And of course there's nobody around anywhere, because you can tell this is like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. No one is around, and no one's around the train station. So it's just him and her. And she tries to run away. She tries to catch the train, but unfortunately she's too late. You see her trying to open the train subway door, and it won't open because she missed it. It's too late. So she's left behind, and she gives that horrified look, you know. And then she sees Frank Zito coming down the stairs after her, and she runs around and tries to hide in the bathroom, tries to hide in the bathroom stalls. She tries to be as extremely quiet as she can possibly be, but you can see the pain in her face trying to stay quiet. and then you see Frank looking around in the stalls for her, and he walks away. So it seems like she got away. She might get away, and then and then she's relieved, and she starts like laughing. She's so like relieved and that she got away, you know, and that she's not gonna fall prey to this madman. And then she goes to the bathroom to wash up, and guess who's behind her, you know, with a short sword, and he stabs it right through her back, right through her chest. Oh, it's vicious, it's brutal, and he scalps her as well, and he takes the scalps home, and he has these mannequins set up in his room, and he thinks he's some kind of crazed artist or something. He puts the scalps on the mannequin's head, and you can see the blood running down on their heads. And he dresses them up all nice, like, you know. He sees it like works of arts, kind of, and he talks to the girls, you know, like they're real people, you know. That's how demented this guy is, you know. It's so nasty. But then he meets this young woman at the park, Anna, played by the lovely, the beautiful Caroline Munro, and he sees her bag, and he sees her name and address is on the bag, so he uses that as his excuse to go visit her photography studio. She's a photographer. She takes pictures of young, beautiful models. So he uses that excuse to stop by her studio and start talking to her like he's this great artist, you know. And she really responds to that because she is legit an artist, you know. She's really into her work. She's really into her photography. She sees it as a great art form. And he plays the eccentric artist, which in his crazed mind he probably believes he is, you know. And he is well spoken. He's no dummy. He knows how to talk. He knows how to pretend to be a normal person when he has to, you know. So he plays that to his advantage, and surprisingly it works, you know. She really responds to him, you know. Which is funny because she's absolutely ridiculously gorgeous, and Mr. Frank Zito is not attractive at all. He's kind of a he kind of looks like a cross between Ron Jeremy and Super Mario Brother. You would never imagine in your wildest dreams that an absolutely drop-dead gorgeous woman would respond to him, but she does, you know. And that does happen in real life sometimes, you know. If someone connects with something like that, when it comes to art, you know, people, it's such a deep thing. It's such a personal thing, art, you know. I know that from experience because I myself, at one time, kind of fancied myself an artist. I did go to art school and everything. But fortunately things didn't work out for me. But yeah, art is a very personal thing, you know. And it's intense. So they bond on that, and they end up dating. So he takes her out to the restaurant and everything, and they have a great time, you know. He starts really falling for her, so it seems. So one time he stops by for a modeling session where she's taking the pictures of all the models. But of course his insane, warped mind gets the better of him, and he sees the models, and he decides to steal one of their necklaces, and he uses that as an excuse to go by and visit that young model's apartment. You can probably guess what happens, you know. The young girl goes to take a bath, and then he knocks on the door, and he says, "Oh, I just wanted to bring this necklace back to you." And she's really thankful and everything. "Okay, I'll see you later." And then of course, while he's talking to her, he unlocks the latch to the door so he can come back in. And that's exactly what he does. And he continues his murderous ways, his murderous streak, and he's got another victim, another scalp for the mannequins. And then, but this one girl, this last girl, the model, he he feels she really looks like his mother, so he kind of really goes off on a tangent, trying to talk to her, saying, I know who you are, your hair is different, you look different, but I know who you are, you know. And he starts talking to her like his mother, and he goes off on a psychotic rant, you know. But yeah, such a great movie, I think. I think this is my favorite personal standalone slasher, Maniac. There was also a remake of it recently, starring Elijah Wood, which was also very good, I must say. It was one of the better remakes in recent memory. But of course, nothing is like the original. So, like I said, amazing performance from Joe Spinell, and he co-wrote it. So, just an awesome slasher. It's very gritty, very grimy, and it's something you watch and you feel like you're not supposed to be watching it, you know. It's real. You feel bad, like it's really it's that disturbing. It really gets under your skin, you know. And of course, Caroline Munro is so beautiful, and she does a fantastic job. She's a great actress. So I highly, highly recommend this film. So check out Maniac, starring Joe Spinell and Caroline Munro. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.